Good morning. My name is April Edwards. I'm a senior cloud developer advocate and DevOps practice lead. I'm actually based out of the UK, despite my badge saying I'm from the US. I am, but I'm also a Brit. So I'm pretty geographically closely located to everyone here. We're going to talk about putting the ops in DevOps. It's a topic I am very, very keen on, and I do a lot of work with. We tend to focus a lot in DevOps with developers, but I want to talk about it in the ops side, and I broke my little thing. So before we get started, this is Sir Titan, by request of certain people in the audience. Sir Titan flew over from the US about 8 weeks ago. He's my buddy. He is not here today, but he's with us virtually, Jess. Titan is a 69-kilo Great Dane. That was my mother's that I inherited. So he's kind of like a small horse. He comes up to about here. And if any of you watched Microsoft Build in the UK, Titan came to the Microsoft campus and made an appearance. So he's my coding buddy. So we want to thank all the sponsors for putting this on. This is a great event. Unfortunately, I was at another event yesterday in, what city was I in? Zurich. So I'm here today, glad to be here because this is the much better event. So I want to ask all of you, we've all been locked away for like a couple years. How would you define DevOps? Shout it out. Do we need more coffee? So I think if all of you were to be a little bit more vocal, we'd have very different answers. And this is going to come from our very different life experiences, where we've been, the teams we've worked on, and maybe we haven't had any experience with DevOps. So as we get started, we're going to go ahead and watch a little video.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. Tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
I love showing this video because this is DevOps. This is exactly what we talk about. We think about the first video. There are 4 people accessing that car. So let's think about how we used to deploy legacy applications. I used to physically walk into my data center, walk up to my rack, and plug something into that USB port. I'd have to make changes, deploy the application. It was me, myself, and I in the data center. If it went well, I was in and out. If it didn't, I slept on an air-conditioned floor. We've all been there. But now when we're deploying application, everyone is involved in our teams. We have our developers, we have our QA teams, we have security teams, we have PMs. We have everyone involved in this process now. And a lot of times, the developers that we're working with don't even have access to the servers. Us as operational folks have to give them that access. So we've kind of gated them. We've created this barrier in our organizations. So when we look at how we deploy applications, we have infrastructure as code, we have automation, we have CI/CD, we have PowerShell. We have all these amazing tools that help us deliver applications faster than ever before. So when we looked at that first car, they were using a physical hammer. Here, they're using an air wrench. Our tooling has completely changed how we deliver our infrastructure and our applications. If you look at the guy at the very, very top, he's cut off, his head's cut off a little bit. He's monitoring that situation. He's looking how to make that pit stop even faster for the next time. And that's how we deploy, and that's how we want to think of how we deploy things in our infrastructure, in our applications today. We want to monitor and continuously make those changes. We also have a gentleman here in the back, could be a lady, can't tell. We have a person here in the back holding a jack. We have a person behind them with a second jack, because they have to have that redundancy and resiliency in their system, because without it, they'll fail. So these guys are protecting themselves from the instances that hurt, and that's something we need to start thinking about. So I want to define DevOps. It's a quote that we use here at Microsoft. It's something that we go ahead and work with customers, and it's something I talk about a lot. Because we have all these different backgrounds, we need to level set how we define DevOps. We define DevOps as a union of people, process, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. And I want to focus on that word value, because it doesn't matter what we're delivering, we need to be delivering value. We need to think of how we're incentivized in our IT teams. So as an IT pro or as an ops person, I'm incentivized to keep everything on 24/7, 365. Now my development team wants to push features, and that's how they're incentivized. Have we pushed new features? Is that making us money? The problem with that is we're colliding. We're not delivering that same value. We're not aligned in our organizations. Now my career started over 20 years ago in the operational side, and I moved into the development side because I wanted to go further down the stack and experience more. I wanted to automate things and get involved and understand why, as an IT pro, everything sucked, right? Why was I having these late nights? So why is DevOps important, and why do we even care? Because your competition's already doing it. How many of you ordered a pizza during lockdown? I ordered a lot. So when you order pizza on Domino's, you see beginning to end where your pizza is in its journey to your front door. I can literally time when I need to get up off my sofa, put on something probably suitable for human consumption, and get my pizza, right? We think about Uber. Living in the UK, Uber has been a big, massive controversy in London because they've outdone the taxi industry. Why? Because I can open my app, I can order my Uber, I know who's going to be at my door, when they're going to be there, how much I'm going to pay, which is, if any of you have taken a taxi around London, know you get gouged as a tourist, or any other city. I have yet to take a taxi in this city because I take the trains. But that's why Uber's really, really doing well. That's why these organizations are doing well. But they need to reduce human error, and that's what they've done really successfully. So why do we care about DevOps? Is it a theory? Is it a thing? We use these metrics to get real metrics to kind of feedback and give back to organizations. The bottom line is our companies want to increase their revenue, and they want faster time to market. But as a developer, or as an operational pro, we want to go faster time to market. We want to be able to deliver our systems with less downtime, be able to recover from incidences faster. So we have hard stats to show that we can achieve this as a high-performing DevOps organization. So we have this people barrier, and the people side is the hardest part of DevOps. 80% of DevOps is going to be the culture change. The other 20% is going to be 10% of it the products, 10% of it the process. With the people change, it is hard. There's no easy way around it. I'm going to go into a little bit of how we made that culture change at Microsoft. Because as an operational person, I had to work with developers, the QA teams, SREs, etc. We had to work together, and we had to change our ways of working. So we're going to go into that a little bit. So everyone had roles, not jobs in the organization. We had to break down those barriers between those teams. Now the process side, again, just 10%. We had to look at quality. We have the planning phase. We have the development phase. We have the operational phase, and we have that delivery phase. We are continuously improving. So we need to think, where do we start first in a DevOps cycle? We got to start where it hurts the most. And it's going to suck. How many of you have tried to embrace DevOps before? Was it fun? Did you cry? I cried. I absolutely cried. And before joining as a cloud advocate at Microsoft, I was a senior software engineer. And I'm going to go into a little bit about how that worked in my role and the changes we had to go under. I'm going to talk about shifting left a lot. Why do we want to shift left? We want to fail fast, just like my first marriage, and we want to do things early and often. Why? Because we want to involve every person. This is part of that culture change. People ask, well, when do I bring in the security team? When do I bring in the developers and the QA team? Day one. In your plan and design phase. Everyone needs to be in that room talking about what they need to deliver in that project. You don't want to be doing it in the deploy and release phase. You need it back in the planning phase. So, bottom line, there's going to be a cost associated to this. There are financial benefits that organizations like to look at. Now, 95% of cloud breaches are due to human error. How many of you have ever made a mistake? Who of you have never made a mistake? I would love to see one. No, you're lying. You're lying. We've all made mistakes. I have brought down an entire VMware cluster because the stupid naming convention was identical to the server minus one stupid letter or number. It was identical. Who does that? My team. We see a lot of organizations that have cloud breaches, and they're all down to human error. Capital One had a misconfigured firewall. Somebody misconfigured it, they did it manually, they didn't automate the process, and they had to open ports and let people in. Equifax had a massive breach in the US where their web portal was hacked because people saved their passwords in plain text. Uber's had another breach. Where do they put their passwords? Plain text in a GitHub repository. How many of you have ever gone, you know, I'm just going to put this password in this file over here on the server, no one's going to find it? Very few people admit. I've done it a few times. I've been in a rush, I'm delivering a project, and I put a password somewhere because I'm like, oh, no one will find this, it'll be fine. And then I get nailed. And then, you know, yeah. But so we need to think about starting secure and staying secure. And that's a really important part of how it's changing our mindset. But there's some tooling that's going to help make this easier for us. Because as a developer, and I know we hate the word developer in IT operations, just bear with me. As a developer, I did not care about security. I mean, I cared that I kept my job and that we were secure. I wasn't the security person, so I kind of fought this in my own career. As an IT pro, that security person would bang on the door and go, we can't deliver this because it's not secure enough, and here are the 800 reasons why. So we need to start secure and stay secure and help ourselves. So I want to talk about this continuous delivery model. How many of you have had those big deployments, like once every 6 months in your organizations over a bank holiday weekend, and it goes bad, like real bad, right? I've been there. I spent 72 hours recovering our entire storage estate because we had an issue in a port on a switch and we lost everything in our tier 1 applications. We lost Citrix, we lost Exchange, we lost SharePoint. I spent 72 hours at my desk with people bringing me coffee and food. I was not allowed to leave my office. If I went to the toilet, my manager's like, where the hell are you? And I'm like, I need to pee, right? So we need to look at a continuous delivery model because when we look at this continuous delivery model, we're making small, minute changes. They're traceable. We can revert them if something does go awry. We can do automated testing because we need to know what we're deploying before we deploy it. How many of you write a script and just go, I'm going to push the big red button now and see what happens? Who does that in production? Oh, yes. Yeah. We need to do better. So we're going to talk about some ways to do that. So I want to talk about how we had to change things at Microsoft because this is 80% of our battle. And I know we want to talk tech and we want to talk really cool ways to automate things, which I can answer more questions on later. But we need to talk about the cultural change. First thing we had to do at Microsoft was actually this all started with Satya coming into Microsoft in, oh God, I don't remember what year. I should remember what year. But he wanted to enable every person on the planet to do more. And he said, we're going to eat our own dog food. Now, someone the other day gave me a really great phrase. I always say eat our own dog food. We have to start using our own products, okay? I like the phrase we're drinking our own champagne. That is way more betterer, and that's great English. But we had to adopt a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. This meant that we had to grow and learn and a safe space to do this. And this is probably, for me, the most critical thing I've found in my career. How many of you have ever been told failure is not an option on a project? Yeah. I've been told that a lot. It scares the pants out of me. Every time it scares the snot out of me. And I am scared I'm going to screw up. I'm scared I'm going to muck it up and I'm going to be out of job. And I've been in that situation where I've been out of job. That's actually how I ended up in the UK. We'll go into that another day. But I had a manager said failure is not an option. Instead, failure is an opportunity to grow and to learn. We're not really failing. Something screwed up. Okay, it broke. Let's fix it and we learn. That was the mentality we had to adopt, and always learning. I put in learning days every single week for myself. I also put in a blogging block, which I'm really terrible about doing, but I put in a 4-hour learning block on anything during the week. It could be something totally not related to my job or something in my job. So I'm guaranteed to learn something new. But I learn on my job pretty much every single day. We also had to create a customer-obsessed culture. We had to get closer to our customers, and I'm going to use this phrase, zero-distance approach. And we also had to align to shared goals and incentives and objectives in our teams, and that's delivering that value that I spoke about. So we had to change our definition of done. Now, this is a developer word, and I'm going to use the word developer because we don't really have another good word for it. It's something we say at Microsoft. So when Microsoft says the word developer, that means all of you as well. I'm sorry, it's a marketing term, but people that write cool stuff and automate stuff, right? We have to write a definition of done. So when I was a senior software engineer, we walk into a customer project. We were build with, code with customers. When we engage with a customer, we had 3 to 6 months to deliver something, and we had to define what is done. We've all been there with a customer, whether it's an internal customer for our own organizations, for a department, or an external customer, because I've worked for MSPs as well. The customers move the goalposts all the time. I've not met a customer who doesn't try to move the goalposts and get more for their money, right? So every engagement, we change our definition of done. Every sprint cycle we work in at Microsoft or engineering departments, we have a definition of done. What are we trying to achieve? Every single time. We have to have a production-first mindset. What does that mean? When I write something or do something for my project, when I'm deploying infrastructure, it's not just test or dev. Is it ready for production? That's putting security first. So we enhanced our security from day one. We shifted left within our own products. We also had to change how we collaborated and we developed and we delivered. And part of that was using our own tooling, but how we structured our teams. So we had to take a zero-distance approach to our customers, and we keep trying to achieve this. We're not perfect. We're working on it. How many of you remember the Microsoft days of old? Windows Server broke, Exchange broke. You call someone, probably in India, in a different time zone. It's 3 a.m. You're cranky. I was cranky. I was always cranky. And they'd fix your problem. You complain about the product, and they go, "Oh, I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry, ma'am." They did nothing. They don't care. They just there to help you fix it and move on. Now, we have mechanisms to reach the product teams directly. We have Sydney sitting in the room. I'm going to point her out because she's here. She sits on the PowerShell team. We're at a PowerShell conference. PowerShell is open source. You can contribute directly to PowerShell. You go to github.com. PowerShell has a way to open an issue. You tell them this doesn't work or this could be better. We use this feedback mechanism to build better products. We also have azure.feedback.com. We also have Stack Overflow. But if you go to feedback.azure.com, you give that feedback directly to the product teams. And that's critical to developing a better product. So if you go, you know what, I want this PowerShell feature. And if 100 of you tell the PowerShell team you have that feature, they push it up into their sprints, into what they're going to develop. Because that's important to you as the end user. And that's taking that zero distance approach. We also have to change our KPIs on what we delivered. So if I'm in a task in a sprint and I'm writing PowerShell code, which I'm okay at, but there are a lot better people writing PowerShell than me, okay? It may take you 2 hours to write something. It may take me 8. So using time estimates or hours completed is a really poor way to measure your people. Also looking at number of bugs found, right? Team burn down, team capacity. These are really unhelpful. Percent code coverage. If you're writing a PowerShell script and you're like, "Oh, I've done this in 80 lines," and someone else is like, "Yeah, I did it in 10." That's not fair, right? At least that's my thought process. So we have to look at different ways to deliver this. We have to look at maybe our change in performance. So maybe that 8 hours it took me to write that PowerShell script, it took me 4 the next time. That is a KPI that I'm used to measure. Did I improve? Did I learn? Did I enhance that growth mindset? I will fully admit where I suck technically. And if my manager went, "Right, you've improved over this time," that's awesome. We have to change what we track with our customers. So if a team pushes out a feature and it's not getting used, it's useless, right? How many of you use Microsoft 365 on a day-to-day basis, right? Most of us probably, or Slack. Microsoft 365 pushes out a feature. It has all these applications, and if no one uses the application, what are you paying for? You're going to downgrade your service level. You're going to go from an E5 plan to an E3 plan, or whatever it is, right? You're going to change what you're using if you're not fully utilizing it. What are customers' engagement with the application? What's their NPS score, satisfaction rates? A lot of times within the team, we look at our pipeline throughput. So we want to put testing into our pipelines when we're deploying things. I've been on a project where we're running some tests on Terraform, infrastructure as code, pushing out to our project, and it took 50 minutes to run Terra test against our code. 50 minutes. That meant I pushed my PR into my repo, submit my code as a good developer would, walk away, go make a pizza, come back, my code failed. My test failed. 50 minutes lost. Redo it again, 50 minutes lost because my code failed again. So we took that into ourselves to say, you know what, next sprint cycle, we're going to fix this 50-minute test. We got a 50-minute test down to, it's about 8.5 minutes. We had to make those improvements because the deployment time was stupid. It was inhibiting us from delivering something. Also looking at live site health, okay? So how many of you play Xbox? You know, I really expect more people to say yes to this question every time I talk. yeah, but I can play Xbox here. Doesn't matter. Play whatever console you want. But Xbox, I was working with the customer experience team. They have their dashboard that says that their site is up. For any of you that work in Azure, any Azure service that goes offline, that's degraded, you can see it online because we're being transparent to you as a customer. So we need to know what's our time to A, notice a problem, and B, recover from it. So when we talked about those other customers like Capital One and Uber, it took them months, sometimes years, to find these issues in their organizations. So they had those breach occurring for quite a long time. So those are other scores we look at. Yes, we had a problem. How fast can we roll back? How fast can we fix that issue and remediate it? We're constantly measuring and improving. We're looking at patterns. We're looking at cost of operation. Can we make, maybe if we're running something on Windows servers, because we go to the cloud, we get everything on a Windows server, but let's optimize it. How can we save some cost to organization? Justin Grody gave a talk a few minutes ago about using Azure functions. If we can take some tasks, automate it, and put into a function or a way to deliver it where it doesn't cost us money, that's a great way forward. So let's go back to our people. How did we deliver this as a team? So I told you I was a senior software engineer. Does that tell you what technology stack I worked with? It didn't. So we have all these different teams, and we talk a lot about ops and SRE, and people often ask, let's talk about SRE versus DevOps. SRE is part of DevOps. We integrated our SRE teams into every single one of our teams. Sorry? Site reliability engineering. So it's your monitoring and management and traceability of all your systems. We built out feature teams. Now, each product in Microsoft, each product group has feature teams. This is how we work as an organization. As a senior software engineer, I got moved into a feature team. I started off in an Azure cloud native team. So we were Kubernetes, containers, infrastructure as code, automation. So when I use the phrase DevOps as my specialty, it's kind of a blanket statement. Infrastructure as code, automation, and making all these things work together. So in that team, I was based in an EMEA-based team. We worked across 3 different time zones. The next year, they said to us, we're going to move you into a UK-based team, so a geographically centric team. And in that team, I had all sorts of people. I had database specialists. I had AI ML specialists. I had C# specialists. I had all sorts of different people. We had to start changing how we delivered our code to our customers. So instead of being this horizontal engineer, because I only care about one part of my stack. I don't care about the data stack. Sorry, Jess. Jess over here loves data. Data ain't my thing. Like I can touch it. When people ask me data questions, I'm like, I start shaking and I call Jess or one of my other friends that's a data expert. It's just not my specialty. And I didn't care about it. I really didn't care about data. I'm like, I don't care about what my infrastructure changes did to the data stuff. Not my problem, right? That's taking that DevOps mentality within my infrastructure team and throwing it over the fence. And we don't want to do that. So we strive for vertical engineers. That's why they gave me the title of senior software engineer, because it didn't matter what my technology stack was. When I'm working on a customer project, I have to be empathetic. Remember I said I didn't care about data? I started becoming really empathetic to the data side of it, because you're right. Shh. Don't tell anyone. No, absolutely not. Cookies? Okay, I'm in. Data has cookies. But I cared about that whole stack. So when I'm delivering that customer solution, I wasn't just delivering infrastructure as code. I cared about what it did to everything else. And I had to learn other things. This made me that more T-shaped engineer, right? Whether you're in the ops space, the development space, data space, you have to care about those other elements. So I put this into kind of more of a infrastructure-friendly stack. I have worked with a lot of organizations that have networking teams. They have the cloud team or the data center team, whatever they want to call it. Then they have a storage team, right? How many of you worked in those organizations? Absolutely. And they still exist today. I was working with a UK partner recently, and I was like, we gotta change this. Because I watched the cloud team scream at the networking team for an outage. And it actually happened to them a few days ago. And they pinged me, and I'm like, maybe you should mix up your teams into horizontal teams. And they don't want to change. They don't want to make that change. And that's a hard discussion to have. But when they keep coming to me with the same flipping problem, I'm like, it is the same answer. Mix up your teams, because they keep putting blame over the fence. So I talked a little bit how we changed our teams around. All of our engineering teams on the product side were pre-COVID in the same geographical office. That's changed because of COVID, so we still work in these geographical teams. I told you I moved to a UK-based team to deliver to customer, but we're cross-discipline. So we had to get buy-in from the top of the organization, right? So Satya came in and said, we're going to deliver this growth mindset, we're going to be closer to our customers, zero-distance approach. Awesome. But each team has its own working agreement. We decide how we're going to work. So each team is unique in that. So if you're working on a team for a year, for 12 to 18 months, you can choose to go to another feature team because you're like, you know what, this is fun, but actually I want to go work on this feature because this excites me. Or you want to go work in that kind of culture. So we have our own working agreement. We're self-managing. And why is that important? Because as a team, you need to have that culture because that is really the culture you're in and day out. I saw my colleague Pierre walk in here. He's walked out, which is a shame because I was going to pick on him because he is on my team. But our team has a culture, has a very specific culture. So we agree to that. We're currently writing our team OKRs, our key objectives and results for the next financial year at Microsoft, which starts July 1st. We're deciding as a team what we want to deliver and how we want to have that impact across the world. And these teams own everything from day one inception of idea, so maybe what the customer's putting into a GitHub repo as an issue or a request, into production. They're going that full DevOps process. So when you sit there and talk to Sydney and the PowerShell team that are here, they see every single request you put in for a feature, and they own that to production. That includes the monitoring and anything that sits behind it. And when you talk to developers or engineers and people that write code, they're like, I don't want to touch infrastructure. And as infrastructure, you're like, I don't want to touch code. And this is hard because as an ops person, I'm like, yeah, I didn't want to touch code for a long time. I was like, I'm not a programmer. And that's kind of how I thought of it. And then when I started moving into development, my husband said to me one day, you're not a developer. You're better than that. He's not in the room, so I can talk about him. Ensue anger and fire that she hath brought forward. I don't see a developer as a negative term. I know it's a thing. I don't think, I define a developer as someone that tells a machine to automate something for them. Whether that's PowerShell, Bash, you are a developer. And we don't have to call ourselves developer in public. We're in a safe space here. I didn't push my husband out of a moving vehicle at 80 miles an hour down the motorway on the M25. He is still living and breathing. But as someone who writes code, they don't want to touch infrastructure. And it's tough. It's a tough battle to have, but they have to have that empathy. They have to know how their code affects the infrastructure. And if you make infrastructure changes, you need to know how you affect their code. It's a two-way street. And it's hard because you don't want to know about code. You're like, you know what? I don't want to touch JavaScript, but we need to know about it. We need to know about each other. We need to care about each other. We need to be one big happy family. So we have modern operations. We have a lot of pillars. I'm not going to go through all of these. Again, there's no central operational team in any of the Microsoft feature teams anymore. We all need to care about these things. And these are the pillars of modern operations that we have to care about day in and day out. So you're going to get what you measure, and you don't measure what you don't want. Okay? These are critical things. That output that we get is going to help us give us that traceability, that monitoring and optimization. And we all have these time thieves. I think the biggest thing we have is we have too much work. Someone comes and taps on our shoulder and says, I need this done yesterday. And you can't work on the things you need to do. You're always putting out fires. And that's our unplanned work. So we need to figure out how to do that. So maybe you align someone in your team to tackle these unplanned works, right? Neglected work. Start creating a backlog. Start prioritizing it. How do our teams do it in engineering? We have a backlog. These are the tasks. We have a list. Every 2-week cycle, we pick one out and say, yep, we're going to address this week. And then we might assign 2 people to bugs or the backlog items that are firefighting. We need to remove that manual intervention in our production environments. We need to automate everything. We're at a PowerShell conference. Who does not automate their environment today? Good. I don't have to kick anyone out of the room. We need to look at ways we can, it's happened. So we have automation to the rescue, right? We want to look at tooling over our tasks. I'm not supposed to say hit by a bus. If you win the lottery and you disappear tomorrow, who's going to take over those tasks? We need to think of how that's going to happen. I've been in situations on a Monday morning, actually Tuesday morning, over a bank holiday weekend, my colleague died. I've been in that situation more than once. We need to find ways to do better. But on a happier note, let's find ways to take a holiday and not be checking our phones. So I want to talk about source control because this is going to enter in why source control is important. And I can't pick on anyone who's not in the room right now, Pierre Roman, and I promise I wouldn't say his name, if I did. Pierre and I were working on a project recently. We're on the same team. We'll call him colleague A, and don't pick on him when you see him in real life outside this room. I put our code, when I say code, our project, our documents into source control. Pierre, here you go, created a task. We had full tracking of our tasks. Pierre decided to download the document locally and work on it. He lost 6 weeks of work. Pierre's not in the room right now, but he didn't want to use source control. He didn't want to use simple things. How many of you have had a script that someone's gone in and changed? Did it work after they changed it? Yeah. We need source control so that we can have versioning, right? We've all done it with our documents or our scripts, version 1 or, underscore O.1. This is why we need source control. This does this for us. We don't have to be a developer or a programmer. This is important to us as IT pros. So why do we need it? Version control, number 1. We're going to talk about GitHub, because GitHub is big and it's easy. We can track all of our changes. And it's scary when your changes are tracked. Why? Because someone's going to see that you screwed up. How does that scare you? Anyone? That absolutely scared me. Really? Well, you're special, Rob. The first time I had to use source control and someone's going to see what I screwed up, I was scared. But this is going into that growth mindset and allowing them to grow and allowing them to work. We can work cross-team collaboration. So we're going to talk about GitHub. Nobody cares. What is GitHub? Does anyone not know what GitHub is? Okay. Visual Studio Code. Again, we can use tools like code spaces. We can use live share. We can work together. We don't have to be on the same machine. If you've ever tried to share your screen on Teams, please tell me it isn't painful, right? It sucks. So I'll use live share in VS Code. I'll use live share from code spaces. I'm working remotely this week. I can literally spin up a code space, share my script with someone, and we can live edit it together. I'm going to talk about GitHub Co-Pilot in my next talk tomorrow. Pending I don't break it, because I broke it last time. It's an AI programmer. It's going to show you how to write better code. Now, the reason I want to talk about it is because we're not always the best people at writing code, or we get stuck, or we have to look something up. That's fair. It uses a pretty good database and index to help us write better code and really popular lines of code. The other reason why I want to touch on Copilot is because we're starting to talk a lot about accessibility in this day and age, right? I grew up working in tech. I was always different. I'm cool with that. But I never understood I adapted how I write code and how I do things in my day-to-day job. I didn't get it. I didn't even think about it. I had a colleague at Microsoft, Donna Sarkar, present on accessibility. Now, a lot of people have physical and mental issues, whether it could be anything from depression to how they learn. I'm a visual learner. I need to see something and I'll memorize it like a snapshot in my head. But other people need to write the code. They need to be tangible, or sometimes they read it. So the reason why I really like GitHub Copilot is because it shows me, the visual person, how to write code. And if you have some kind of impairment or issue, or, kind of accessibility need, it can really help with that. So I was having an issue. I was looking at Visual Studio Code and all my code was going up this way. And I'm like, all right. Went to the eye doctor, got glasses. It was a little bit better, but being on a screen all day, I was actually just missing words. If I was writing a document or writing code, all my things were sloping. So having to overcome that, I was doing all sorts of things to overcome that in my day-to-day work. I didn't even clock. And I didn't even clock some of the other accessibility things that I use, like dark mode, right? Some people hate dark mode. Some people love it. We need to think about these things. And I think GitHub Copilot is a really good tool to help all of us. And I don't think we recognize it, but I want to bring it up because as we talk about cultural changes, we got to start thinking about how people work in our teams, right? Working methods, places to work, what they're comfortable with. I'm not going to go too much into code security. I'll go into that tomorrow. Again, don't put passwords in your code. Don't put in your GitHub repo. But there are some great tools out there I'm going to talk about tomorrow that scan to find it before they even hit your repository. So what does this all mean? First of all, we want to deliver value. We want to increase our efficiency because we don't want to not be able to go on holiday. I want to go on holiday and I want to leave everything behind. And I don't want to have to delegate. I want to just let stuff go. We want to have alignment of goals and incentives in our organization. We want to continuously improve and deliver faster and have that autonomy. So we got about 10 minutes left. I am going to open up my GitHub repo and put up my slides with everyone here and show you how to open up a PR. Does anyone here want to see that? Cool. As I do that, I'm going to try to take questions at the same time, but my multitasking skills might fail me, but let's see how we do. Right. Let's see if we can get this to go. Does anyone want to ask a question while I'm trying to break this?
Where do customers fit in?
In terms of what?
In terms of build process.
Customers fit in from day one, right? We need to deliver that value. So who is your customer, right? Is it internal? Is it external? And when we're in that planning phase and we're delivering that feature or that thing, that value, what is it we're trying to deliver? What's that definition of done? What are we delivering? So start thinking about those things. So why are we doing this thing? Why do we go to work? Why am I building out, let's say I got to build out a cluster. I'll go with Jess, a SQL cluster, right? I'm deploying a SQL cluster. I've done that many times, Jess, by the way, for the record. I took SQL off my CV because I was getting too many bad calls from recruiters years ago. No, but seriously, we're deploying a SQL cluster, whether it's in Azure, on-prem, doesn't matter. Why? Why are we deploying a SQL cluster?
Because the data is important.
Data is important, yes. Good answer. Data is absolutely important. But someone's requested it, right? Someone's requested for an application, something. That's our customer from day one. That's the initiation, and what's our definition of done? Deploy the SQL cluster. Tell us what we need to list out, ask them what they need delivered. I could go on and on about delivering that kind of stuff. So let's do this. I'm gonna upload my slide deck. So they've asked us to create a folder in GitHub. I'm gonna make this a bit bigger for everyone so that we can see. How is that? Is that pretty? Can everyone see that? I like working in dark mode. Does anyone want me to go to light mode? Okay, cool. So I can do two things here. I can open up a GitHub code space from here, right? But I don't want to just put my folder into main. We can call it code. It's really going to be a file. If I put everything into main, I'm a bad developer. I'm a bad IT pro. So I want to create a branch. And in my branch, I'm going to call it April. Deck. There we go. It's not creating it. Hold on. Oh yeah, you're right. I do have to fork it. You're right, I didn't fork it. Thank you. So I have various GitHub repositories. I'll put it in this one. We'll just call it 2022. You know, RTFM, right? Read the fine print. Right. So I have forked this repository. What does this mean? So I've taken the PSConfEU repository and I've put it under my own organization. So I can edit it and merge it in. So I don't affect their single source of truth, if that makes sense. Now I can go in and create a branch. And we're going to create that main branch. So I'm working off this branch. This tells me this here. Now, I'm working from the GitHub site, which is really easy to do, but sometimes it's also hard to see. I can open this up here and go into my Visual Studio Code. I can go in and clone this to my Visual Studio Code locally. I can work in a code space. So I can literally work from any browser in the world. Now, because of time, I'm going to go ahead and I'll be doing that tomorrow in my talk. So we're just going to go ahead and make some changes. So they've asked us to make a folder. They haven't given us really a folder structure. So I'm working from that branch. That's cool. They say don't change the README. That's probably a really good idea. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. No, I don't. I want to create a new folder. Yeah, you do. I hate doing it from the GUI. It's okay. See, I can even type demo right. No, I should be able to pull slash. Yeah. Yeah, I don't do this from the UI very much. Is that bad? There we go. So see, I've already made a mistake.
Mind if I ask a question?
Yeah.
So what's your personal goals to get where you thought you might be? Because you have a business that says, you know, this is important. We want to be close to the customer. We want to have, want to be learning all the time. But how do you get the energy to get to that new place? How do you structure these things for yourself to get there? Because it's easy to write it down, like we have to get there. But the thing with people in process is where do you get the energy, the drive to make that switch, to make that difference? And I thought maybe you can share how you look at those things.
So we were kind of told as an organization, we're going to make these changes. So we had buy-in from the top, right? For me, I sat up too late at 3 a.m. I was working on physical servers, virtual machines, but in a physical data center for years. I got tired of it. I needed a better way of working. That's what I needed. We started doing actually migrating to Microsoft 365, which was then Office 365. And I went, I'm going to be out of job. And I work with a lot of customers that are really scared of being out of a job. And I was like, oh, I'm not out of a job. I'm just going to automate things with PowerShell, and I don't have to manage an infrastructure. Holy crap. I don't get calls at 3 a.m. from my COO because he is up at 3 a.m. sending emails. I joke you not. He didn't sleep. And so at 3 a.m. I get a call from him. So then I started working more in Azure with a customer project, and I fell in love with it. And I started learning there are better ways of working. And I had to make those changes for myself, and that's how I kind of started sharing the message. And how I get the energy? Yeah. Coffee.
That's temporary. You need to have a drive, right? To make it a structured thing. You need to love it. Or you need to, yeah.
Absolutely. You have to love what you do. And I think for me, it became a passion. And it was, like I said, it was hard at first.
So when you look at yourself, when it was hard, what would you tell that person then?
Keep going, one foot in front of the other. All right, so those of you that are watching, I've just uploaded my PDF of my decks into my file that I finally created and renamed because I stink at namings. Sorry, I'll be right there. I'm going to commit these changes. So I'm committing them directly to my branch that I've created. Again, that's not the master change. We're going to commit those changes. And it's added it. And I can hit compare and pull requests. I'm getting your question in just a moment. So I can call it APRO demo. I can go deck upload. I can put in a comment. I probably should put in a comment, but uploading deck for everyone, right? And I can create a pull request. I hit the big green button. And it's going to go ahead and create that pull request, and it's going to compare that. And it also tells me I have no conflicts. Conflicts are another thing we won't get into today. And I'm waiting for them to approve my pull request.
Hang on a minute.
Well, come on. Faster. No, I'm kidding. What drives me? Humans, we like comfort, and that's the hard part. Look at that. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. Humans like comfort, right? We like to be happy. We like to be, you just down. Yeah, I'll deal with you later. We like comfort, right? We like to be happy. We like job security. So this change really stirs the pot. I don't like being comfortable. That's kind of part of who I am. I like new things. I like change. But I think a lot of us like that comfort. And I think we have to think of new ways of working. So again, I'm going to use my husband as an example because I like picking on him. We were sitting in the car again, and he goes, "You're stealing all my customers. You work for Microsoft. You're going to move everyone to Azure." He runs a data center in the UK. He runs a lot of data centers, but he's a cloud manager. He runs cloud teams for UK. And we need data centers. They're not going away. And I'm like, well, hold on a second, because he saw me working with their customers in the UK. Like BMI Healthcare, if any of you live in the UK, they're one of our big customers. It was one of his customers. He panicked, and he's like, "I'm out of job." I'm like, hold on, you're not out of job. You know how to automate. We need automators. It doesn't matter if your stuff is sitting in the cloud, on-prem, or hybrid, because most of our customers are hybrid, or any other cloud. We need automators. And I think it's finding that niche, that comfort, and finding that it's okay, especially with like networking people. Like, but I like to plug things into switches. I'm like, we don't plug into switches now. We write scripts to do the things. And that's better. And I think it's just getting over that hurdle, right? It's kind of like you got to walk before you can run. So going back, thank you, Rob, for approving my PR. It has now merged into that main branch. So if I go to the PSConfEU, we'll just move into another tab for visibility. Oops. we can see that the April Edwards folder is there in my stupid file that Rob should have declined my PR and said, excuse me, you have an extraneous file that doesn't need to be there, but it's okay, he approved it. So my folder's there for everyone to view in this website. But what I want to do, one more thing before we end, and I literally have 9 seconds, is I want to delete my branch. I've opened a branch, so if we think of as our main branch as our trunk, I've opened another branch so I don't affect the gold pot of money for PSConf, and I make that change and I merge it back in without affecting the base code. So we can do this with documents, we can do this with code, really simple. And I'm going to go ahead and delete my branch. And then when I need to make another change to the PSConf, I will create another working branch. So we want quick, easy branches, small changes often, and we could be even better and run tests against our stuff and go, oh, April did something wrong. So thank you everyone for your time. I've run over by 30 seconds. Please feel free to grab me after and ask as many questions as you like.